When France is making sure that all natural resources for these countries belong to France, that's a coup. What are you going to do about it, ECOWAS? These are coups. But somehow, we don't see them as coups because it's the white men doing it. If a black man was doing the same thing to another black man, they'll call them out in a heartbeat.
We are seeing that Africa is continuously experiencing a lot of issues relating to political instability. And when we do an autopsy of the causes of these challenges, we are finding that much of the issues are related to Western interference in African affairs. For instance, look at Libya. Libya is currently a destabilized country because of internal strife that has continued since the death of Muammar Gaddafi. And Gaddafi was a leader who was so much concerned with empowering Libyan people. But later on, we find that United States, with the help of Obama and Hillary Clinton, decided to eliminate him and leave this country in the hands of terrorists and people who do not want peace. So, why is it that we are continuing to see these challenges without any solution? It is upon African leaders to come together and identify serious solutions that can help address these kind of challenges. And one scholar who has continuously fought for issues relating to Africa is Dr. Arikana Chihombori Quao. She has spoken quite candidly on why Africa must delink itself from Western nations and find a path that can help it really get true independence and work towards self-liberation. Here is a clip where she was speaking about the need to respect Africa and why Africa needs support in every agenda that it is pursuing. Let's watch this, then come back and share our thoughts together.
I challenged ECOWAS when they were trying to mobilize the military to go and fight Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. We can have a coup. I said, help me understand something. France has had coups against these nations for centuries. When France is forcing these countries to deposit their bank reserves with France, that's a coup, an economic coup. President Tinubu, what have you done about this coup? You are sitting on the big boy chair now. Talk to me. What are you going to do about this coup? When France is making sure that all natural resources for these countries belong to France, that's a coup. What are you going to do about it, ECOWAS? These are coups. But somehow, we don't see them as coups because it's the white men doing it. If a black man was doing the same thing to another black man, they'll call them out in a heartbeat. We have a serious problem as Africans. We don't even realize how sick we are with this disease. We are not just sick at home. We are not just sick in the doctor's waiting room. We are not just sick in the general ward in the hospital. We are in the intensive care. It's deep. You see, as a doctor, I cannot help you unless you come to me with your complaints. At least recognize that you're sick. But most of the time, we don't even realize that we are sick. So where do we begin? This stupidity that is going on in Africa has got to come to an end. And you can't expect those who put us in positions of servitude to get us out. It's not going to happen. So the question is, when is the African going to wake up? The African is stupid in Africa. The African is stupid in America. The African is stupid in South America. The African is stupid in the Caribbean. Wherever you see us as black people, we do some of the most stupid things. You go into neighborhoods. In America, where I've spent most of my time, look at the Mexicans. They stick together like super glue when it comes to issues pertaining to their existence in the United States as Mexicans. The Irish, the Jews, the Chinese, the Indians ask for their voices loud and clear because they understand the importance of unity. They don't have to love each other, but they understand when it comes to issues pertaining to their sheer existence, they must stick together like super glue, and they do. But when you ask for the voices of black people, we scatter like mice. We don't believe in each other. I was in Dallas and one Zimbabwean, I was asking, are there a lot of Zimbabweans who are you? No, I don't talk to Zimbabweans. I'm the only black person in my neighborhood, and she was so proud of it. I'm speaking to another friend, this time in Zimbabwe. She was so proud that her son cannot speak Shona, and that the son speaks English like a British. And she's telling me this with a certain level of pride. And that's the mother, which means the child is just as doomed. When are we going to wake up and realize that our inability to move forward as a people is because we were defeated where it matters the most? I'm so glad we're sitting here in an institution of higher learning. I'm going to ask you to say, what are we going to do about the educational curriculum? Because that's where it begins. They don't want us knowing our history. They don't want us knowing where we came from. Because if you are a person without a history, who are you? Where do you come from? As Africans, we are too busy running away from who we are. We don't want to embrace our Africanness. Why not? If you refuse and don't accept your Africanness, then who are you? I tell the Africans when they try to act like they want to speak like an American, they want to lose their accent. You can never speak English like an American. Then you don't want to speak your own vernacular. Then who are you? You are just like a ship without an anchor. The wind blows that way, there you go. The wind blows that way, there you go. And there are too many of us who find themselves in that boat without an anchor. What's happening in Burkina Faso must be supported. What's happening in Mali must be supported. What's happening in Niger must be supported. If you care the least bit about our future, how else are we going to get France out of Africa? How else are we going to get Britain, Germany, all those former colonizers? They're now in as multinationals, siphoning billions out of Africa, using safe havens to hide their returns. We know they're here. They are now wolf in sheep's clothing. What is it going to take? If you look at the move that Niger made, by simply saying, France, you can no longer buy our uranium for 80 cents a kilo, when we know very well you're selling it for 200 euros per kilo. Niger was realizing about 1 billion out of the sales of its uranium a year, while France was realizing close to 300 billion. That one move alone, when Niger said, if you want our uranium, 200 euros a kilo, please. Immediately, 300 billion. 1 mineral. It's not going to take much to change Africa. We got what it takes. If there's one thing we're very fortunate of, we are endowed with everything the rest of the world needs. The truth of the matter is, we don't need the world. The world needs Africa. But do we really know that and believe in it and are ready to stand up and proclaim who we are? And let them know. But I've sat in meetings where I've seen ministers, America, can you help us with this? Europe, can you help us? Begging endlessly for something that we have. Whatever they are giving you is what they stole from us. And they are giving you peanuts. When are we going to stop being outsmarted by these people? They come smiling at you. They come to give you aid. You know very well that's your money. But we are so grateful. I once went to the World Bank. Oh, Ambassador, we have money for the African Union. Please, when the chairman comes. So the deputy chair came, and we went. They had $15 million for us. $15 million for the whole African Union. And here's the kicker. They were only going to give us 50% of that. And then when we can show them what we have done with the 7.5 million, then we can have the other 7.5. Blatantly insulting us. And I'm not supposed to say anything. I got my deputy chair, so I need to shut up. But I asked to go to the bathroom. And I called the chair. I said, could you please come down the hall? I said, let's not take that money. I don't know about you, but I feel highly and royally insulted. Treat you like a child. You don't know how to handle money. So we'll just give you 7.5 million. Let's see what you do with it. And then we may or may give you the rest. It's the same thing they're doing at the United Nations. When Africa is supposed to be at the UN Security Council as the 6th and 7th members of the UN Security Council. But you can't have veto power. So come on in, Africa. Oh, we got a kiddie chair over here for you. Sit over there, we got some cookies. Sit over there and be quiet while we take care of business. And we entertain that. Wow. What's wrong with us? What gives me hope is that we have a vibrant African youth who are saying enough is enough. We are not taking this anymore. This abuse has got to come to an end. The exploitation of the African continent has got to come to an end. The Berlin Conference must be dismantled. And for those of you who think Berlin Conference is a piece of history, guess what? It's a piece of legislation nicely designed over a period of 4 months to see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated to this day. As long as there's a country called Malawi, as long as there's a country called Gabon with 1.5 million people, as long as there's a country called Eswatini, Berlin Conference is alive and well. And that's where we get defeated internationally through trade. Oh, you're all equal. You are a sovereign nation, Eswatini. You are a sovereign nation, Togo. You are a sovereign nation, Malawi. And every African country for that matter. So let's go to the market. You, Malawi, with your little basket, with 3 eggs, you're coming to the market. And here comes China with truckloads of eggs. I once was told that Zimbabwe thought, well, let's see if we can sell eggs to China. Let's supply some eggs. They're bringing stuff to us. Let's give them eggs. So I told the president, ask people to go do some research and see how much eggs we need to send to China. The report came back and said, Mr. President, the amount of eggs we produce the whole year, that's one breakfast in China. So you want Zimbabwe to go to the market with China and sell eggs? That's David and Goliath. And it was all by design. As long as we remain as the little-bitty economies that we are today, we are forever getting our rear ends kicked. The only way for Africa to survive is when we unite. A united Africa is a must, but it's going to take minds that are awoken, minds that understand the importance of unity, minds that are free of the legacy of colonization and the legacy of slavery. As we speak today, we are all sick from the disease. None of us is exempt. And that's a fact. I'm going to ask each and every one of you to have a serious conversation with the image in the mirror. And ask yourself why you feel the way you do. Why are you automatically afraid of those who don't look like you? Why do you feel defeated? Why are you afraid to speak up and stand your ground? Besides, you are the mothers and fathers of humanity. Without the black woman, without the black man, the rest of the world would not be. That's a fact. We civilized the world. They came to Africa and stole everything that they never had. Came back with what they stole from us and made us believe that they gave it to us. Timbuktu. Egypt. The Greeks, when they needed to be trained, where were they sent? To Egypt. Because it was already there. We're already doing it. But they want the history to start from here, so we don't talk about what happened before. My brothers and sisters, we are inheritors of an amazing continent. South Africa is an amazing country. We have people like Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, our very own president. People who suffered and sacrificed everything for this country to be free. Why are we trying to disrespect them and go back? South Africa should lead the way. Nigeria should lead the way. Kenya should lead the way. We have countries that should lead the way because they have what it takes to take Africa where Africa needs to be. But let me also add that the leaders cannot do it alone. I don't care what ideas President Zuma had. If we are not ready to implement those ideas and think he can do it as leadership alone, it's not going to work. I was discussing the issues of the quote-unquote coups in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. One African said, but Ambassador, why do we have to do coups to change government? Why can't we just do like the Chinese do? I said, son, let me ask you one question. During the pandemic, the Chinese built a 10,000 square foot hospital bed in 1 week. Are you Africans ready to do that? The Chinese are willing to work non-stop to do what needs to be done for the sake of country, for the sake of nation. We're too greedy, too selfish to do that. I said, son, until you start having the mind of a Chinaman, you can never be like a Chinaman. We have some serious introspection to do. We have some serious thinking to do. We're not asking you to love each other. But simply understand, we want you to understand, that while there is a certain level of camaraderie that exists in other races, there was a strategy put in place to make sure that we remain divided and conquered. Fear was intentionally instilled in us, so we will be forever fearful for nothing, but we're just afraid. There's another book I want to recommend to all of you. It's called The Making of a Slave, the Willie Lynch Letters. Willie Lynch was a slave owner from the Caribbean. He had come up with a way of training his slaves so they would remain submissive for generations to come. One of the ways was taking a black man, tie one leg on one horse facing that way, another leg on another horse facing that way, and he will hit the horses, and they would literally split the men apart. In front of his children, in front of his family, in front of other black people and other slaves. And he particularly wanted the pregnant women. Why? That would be passed on, that fear would be passed on to even the unborn child. So it is, over 400 years later, we almost underwent a genetic mutation of sheer stupidity. We were programmed to be afraid. We were programmed to almost be stupid and just do stupid things. The things that we tolerate, no man in any other country would tolerate. But we do. It's going to take all of you. The students, you are our future. We're counting on you. We're a lost cause. I feel encouraged when we have young people like our moderator. Young people who are awoken. Young people who are saying we can no longer continue to be lied to anymore. We know the truth. Is South Africa ready? Is South Africa ready to lead the way? To stand up and say enough is enough? That we can no longer continue to be exploited. We can no longer continue to be treated as second-class citizens in our own land. The future is bright. If only we could understand that the power is in our hands. Yes, leadership has a lot of role to play, but we have a bigger role to play as citizens. Let's believe in ourselves. Let's stand up for what's right. Let's let the world know that we are the inheritors of the most amazing continent. But they can no longer continue to allow our resources, our inheritance, to fund the educational systems in their countries, to fund the healthcare systems in their countries, to fund the infrastructure development in their countries, while we are languishing in poverty. And they have the audacity to tell us that we're poor people. How dare they? Let me conclude by reading 3 quotes. The first one is from former President Jomo Kenyatta. He said, when missionaries arrived, the Africans had the land and the missionaries had the Bible. They taught us how to pray with our eyes closed. When we opened them, they had the land and we had the Bible. The next quote is from Marcus Garvey. He said, a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And finally, Patrice Lumumba said, the day will come when history will speak. Africa will write its own history. It will be a history of glory and dignity. The time is now. There is no turning back. Africa, wake up. The issues of justice, equality, we understand them. Our ask as Africans is a simple one. We're simply asking that the world treats us the same way they would want to be treated. We are demanding a world that is just, a world that is fair, a world that is free of bigotry and hate. We're not asking the world to do anything that they would not want done unto them. So our ask is a very simple one. I need each and every one of you, after you've had a serious conversation with the image in the mirror, to stand up on top of the tallest mountain, look in the mirror, and tell the world that we are the proud, the beautiful, the intelligent, sophisticated, highly adaptable, and totally indestructible Africans. My name is Arikana Chihombori, a proud mother of 5 and a grandmother of 7 and 2 on the way. Today, we spent an afternoon at Robben Island. And as we were walking around, I had a bottle of water in my hands. And my sister, Honorable Minister C0ups, leaned over to me and she said, "Take it easy on that water. We don't have female facilities at Robben Island." I said, "What? 2024, 30 years since independence, there are no female facilities at Robben Island. What gives?" Her comments reminded me, for when I went to Ghana, speaking at the University of Cape Coast, I stayed at a beautiful hotel. When I walked into the room, right above the headboard was a humongous photograph of Queen Elizabeth. And I thought to myself, now I am going to go to bed tonight with the shadow of Queen Elizabeth hanging over me. What kind of dreams was I going to have that night? I nicely found time. I called my VP and I said, "Could you help me take this photograph down? We shall put it back tomorrow morning, because tonight I intend to have good dreams." And I wondered why, since I was in Ghana, what kind of dreams I would have had I spent the night with the shadow of Nanaya Asandwa hanging over my head. I also wondered, why is it that in 2024, we still have the photograph of Queen Elizabeth hanging over the walls of hotels in Ghana, and not a single photograph of a king or a chief from Ghana? So it is the following morning, I opened my speech by simply wondering, why is it that the photograph of Nanaya Asantwa wasn't hanging in that room, and that the manager of the hotel was a friend and that we were going to have a conversation. Some little bird sent a little message. By the time I got to my room, there was a picture of a queen, a Ghanaian queen, hanging over my head. In 1963, our Pan-African fathers, at the invitation of Emperor Haile Selassie, met in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to discuss the building of an Africa that spoke with one voice, the building of an Africa that was united, the building of an Africa that had a single currency, a single monetary policy, a single military, an Africa that should be, an Africa that was once upon a time. Unfortunately, when they met in 1963, NATO was in full force. NATO heard about the meeting that was getting to be revolutionary, a meeting that was going to undo the Berlin Conference, a meeting that was going to put an end to the exploitation of the African continent. That meeting had to be disrupted. So it is when our Pan-African fathers went to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, we had the Casablanca group, which was Ghana, Guinea, Mali, Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria. They said Africa for the Africans and African Union now. The other 33 members, having tasted power, they were the Monrovia group. They said, no, let's wait on this African unity thing. Let's go slow. They were the majority. So the Casablanca group lost. Year in, year out, the African leaders would meet. The issue of an Africa that spoke with one voice was tabled, and year in and year out, that conversation was passed to next year. Fast forward 2024, we are still going slow at the African Union. The question is, our leadership is fully aware of the pillars of development. Our leaders are fully aware of the enemies to Africa's development. And yet somehow they're incapable of addressing them. We know when it comes to West Africa, the document that African countries were made to sign as they attained their quote-unquote independence, the document that's labeled the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. On one hand, we are giving you your independence, but on the other hand, we want you to sign this document, agreeing to continue to be colonized. And if you choose not to sign this document, in my pocket, I have a gun that has your name. So it is that Guinea and Mali, they chose not to sign the document. History tells us that France moved into those countries, poured concrete into the sewage pipes, destroyed schools, hospitals, roads. Anything that could be destroyed, they destroyed. Anything that they could pick up and take back with them to France, they took. According to President Mugabe, they even took the last pencil. This was done as a way of letting the other African countries know that should you refuse to sign this document, this was the fate that awaited you. Further down, we have more countries that tried to say, wait a minute, the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization is something that's not sustainable. You have to give up 85% at that time of your bank reserves, deposit them with France. Those funds, once gone, they're not coming back. All your minerals discovered and yet to be discovered belong to France, and French companies had the first right of refusal. Your language of instruction shall be French. Your military can only be equipped by France. Your military can only be trained by France. Now, give me a break here. Imagine you are the president of a West African country under French control. and your chief of staff comes to you on your first day in office and says, Mr. President, before you resume your duties, I have some information to share with you. You must give up control of your finances. You must give up control of your natural resources. You must give up control of your military. Now, if you stay away from those, you are free to run your country as you wish. What kind of a country are you running? What kind of a leader are you? And I'm going to bring that question to you. To this day, those African countries are still required to deposit their bank reserves with France. Now, the numbers have gone down some. They're down to the 50, 55, 60. But by and large, with the exception of Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali that said, France, pack your bags and go home. The rest of the African countries are still subjected and held to the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. There are many other pacts and treaties that African countries were forced to sign that are still in place today. So enemy number one is the existence of pacts and treaties that we know they go against the development of Africa. But our leaders, for various reasons, and we know those who have tried to pull away, they've either been assassinated or exiled. So the realities are there, that if African leaders try to push back, there's some serious consequences. In spite of all that, there are some other issues that they also could deal with. We know the NGOs are nothing but wolf in sheep's clothing as they come into our countries. A lot of embassies as well. We have a few nice embassies. But we have many countries that are also just here to make sure that they continue to destabilize the countries. They make sure that the elections are forever interrupted, so they can continue to further their agendas within those respective countries. But also, there are things that we can do something about. You take, for example, our educational system. Why is it that we are still using colonial textbooks? What is keeping the Minister of Education from changing the curriculum? Nothing. Except just maybe the Minister of Education feels that the more they study European history, the more affluent they're supposed to be. Why is it that we are all fully aware that the loans that are being given to African countries, the loans that have been given to African countries for centuries, are frivolous loans that have been paid 1 million times over? We also know very well, for those of you who have not read this book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, if you have not read that book, I urge you to read it. This is a former CIA who was himself an economic hitman, who in his older years he says, the evils, the crimes that I've committed, I cannot lie down in my grave. So he speaks truth to power. He's talking about what he did, the games they played to force African countries to get loans to build a dam that should cost, for discussion purposes, 100 million. But he was encouraged to come up with figures to make that dam cost $1 billion. Ridiculous amounts. And then World Bank would come in and offer to fund that. And the rest of the money is pocketed. Now the country is stuck with $1 billion loan for something that should have cost 100 million. I encourage all of you to read that book, so you see the games that are being played. Now we know all that. Then why is it that our ministers of finance every year Twice a year, they go to the World Bank. They know what's going on, but they say nothing. What is keeping us as Africans from coming together and speaking with one voice and letting the World Bank know, and the IMF, that we have paid for these loans a gazillion times over? We aren't paying for them no more. What are they going to do? If Africa stood together and said this wrong must be righted, what are we afraid of? Why can't we just say it like it is? It is damn wrong. And it cannot continue. But we are afraid. You see, they defeated us where it matters the most. That even things that we have the ability to change, we are afraid of changing them. You see, when the Europeans first came to Africa, they brought us religion. We went to school. They taught us about the colors: orange, yellow, green, white. And then we went to church. And they taught us about a human being called Jesus Christ. And they talked about the angels, and they talked about who are in heaven, a place we all want to go to. They're beautiful, they're angelic, they're desirable. And oh, by the way, they're white. And oh, by the way, we are white, like the angels. But remember, in school, they told us this was white. But never mind how we look. We may look rather pinkish, but don't disregard that. We are white believers. Then they turned around and said there's something called hell. And there's a devil there. A mean creature, ugly, undesirable, does all the horrible things, and that creature is black. And oh, by the way, you too are black. Never mind this black color that we told you in school. And so it is. A blatant lie was told to us, and we have never stood up to say that's a damn lie. I'm not black. They're not white. But never mind. You look like the devil because we told you so. We look like the angels because we told you so. So it is when a little 5-year-old black boy is given 2 sets of dolls, black dolls and white dolls. And he's asked which one is mean, he points at the black one. He's asked which one is ugly, he points at the black one. He's asked which one is nice, he points at the white one. Which one is beautiful? He points at the white one. And then when asked which one is more like you, he sheepishly points at the black one. The 5-year-old boy is defeated before his life even begins. I can tell you there is no self-respecting mother, father, uncle, aunt who set this little boy down and said, you are black and you are ugly. But somehow, there are subliminal messages that this boy just knows it. Think about it. So that same little boy who grew up to be the Minister of Education, he's not going to like anything to do with him. So yes, European history is where it's at. African history? No. It is the same reasoning when I was asked to be a keynote speaker at the National Conference of African Educators. And what I learned that day was that African educators, you African educators, you don't read your own work. in order to be tenured. Many professors, to be tenured, they got to write 10, 20, 30, 40 papers. And those papers can only be reviewed in Europe, in the United States, by credible universities. So I said to the professors, you don't trust each other? You are not credible? If you can't trust each other, why should we parents trust you with our children? To this day, unless things have recently changed, to be tenured in universities in Africa, your work has to be reviewed outside Africa. What's wrong with having universities in North Africa send their work to Southern Africa? Universities in West Africa send their work to East Africa. But no, black professors are going to be reviewing it. It's not acceptable. They won't have the same weight. Do you realize how sad and painful that is? To this day. And the professors are right here, so I'm going to go after you. Because this stupidity has got to come to an end. It is filtering through to everything that we are doing. I am telling you, my brothers and sisters, we are the laughing stock of the world. They know what they're doing to us is wrong. I was a speaker at one conference of journalists. And I asked, I said, why do you guys lie about Africa? Why do you publish stories that are blatantly wrong and you know it? And I still remember it was a journalist from CNN. He says, nobody challenges us. It's just that simple. Nobody challenges us. I can tell you, the current US ambassador to the United Nations, and I'm going to call her out. She was fired by President Trump when I was going to Washington. She used to come to my office, and she would say, Ambassador, talk to the ambassadors. They need to speak up. When she was the former Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, she said, Ambassador, I'll be sitting on this side with the American side, and there'll be the Africans over there. She said, if they could just say some obvious things that would help her come back and make decisions and recommend certain changes. But the Africans don't speak. She said, tell these ambassadors to speak up. Why are we afraid? Because we were defeated where it matters the most, the mind. So no matter how hard we try to change our Africa, until we heal from the legacy of colonization, nothing we try to do is going to succeed. If we don't heal from the legacy of colonization, we will continue to be used as instruments of our own self-destruction. Who are we as Africans? What do we stand for? Viva Africa! Viva Africa! A luta continua.
Now, first of all, let me concur with Dr. Arikana Chihombori Quao about the challenges that Africa is facing and how we have really gone through a lot of issues with the Western nations. And it is incumbent upon African leaders to get the strategies that can help them eliminate these kind of challenges. Why is it that we have organizations within the continent that do not support African ideals? They do not support Africans. For example, you look at the case of Burkina Faso, where we find that ECOWAS marshaled resources to really go against desires of people in Burkina Faso. It tells you that most of our African leaders are just rent seekers. They are people who are there to play to the gallery and support Western ideals. And these Western leaders tend to be their puppet masters. So how can Africa get out of this retrogressive leadership from Western nations? Here is what some research says. African leaders need support against retrogressive policies or attitudes from Western nations that perpetuate inequality, hinder development, and maintain exploitative dynamics. The challenges facing Africa's development are multidimensional, often aggravated by historical injustices, neocolonial strategies, and biased global systems. These retrogressive policies from some Western actors are typically rooted in outdated perceptions of Africa as a continent to be controlled or guided rather than respected as an equal partner. And that is why African countries are moving in droves going to join BRICS, because BRICS is an organization that has put into its founding structure that every partner that joins will be an equal player, and no country will have an opportunity or space to really lecture the other on the kind of ideals or philosophies to be adopted. BRICS is giving every African country an equal opportunity to come to the table of engagement where there is no biases or discrimination on which part of the world you come from. Firstly, Africa's colonial history laid the foundation for many structural inequalities that persist today. Many Western powers extracted immense wealth from African countries, leaving behind underdeveloped institutions and unstable political environments. Despite gaining independence, neocolonialism, marked by economic exploitation, undue political influences, and cultural impositions, continue to stymie genuine progress. These retrogressive dynamics manifest in unequal trade policies, unfair debt structures, and exploitative investment practices that keep African nations economically dependent and disadvantaged. That is why most African leaders have always complained of the multilateral organizations, the Bretton Woods organizations like the IMF and the World Bank. Their structures are used to continue keeping Africa in debt, so that there is no development going on, and if any development is going on, it is at the mercy of Western nations. That must change. Moreover, African leaders often contend with a global economic system that marginalizes their voices and needs. International financial institutions, frequently influenced by Western nations, impose stringent conditions on loans and aid packages that can undermine national sovereignty, enforce austerity measures, and erode social welfare. Such conditions often exacerbate poverty and prevent the equitable distribution of resource. To achieve sustainable development, African leaders need backing to renegotiate these power imbalances, formulating homegrown solutions that respect their unequal cultural and socio-economic contexts. You see these kind of issues that Africa is going through. You are able to understand that IMF has led to a lot of unrest in many countries. For example, Gen Zs in Kenya went to protest some punitive taxes that were imposed on them because of IMF conditions that were put to the country. IMF will never offer any solution to Africa. And these Western institutions have never and will never and has never helped any African country. Western double standards in climate policies often reveal a retrogressive approach towards Africa. The continent bears minimal responsibility for global carbon emissions, but suffers disproportionately from climate change impacts. Meanwhile, African leaders advocating for climate justice are often met with paternalistic or dismissive responses from Western counterparts. Support is needed to resist these approaches and to secure climate financing and technology transfers on equal terms. Additionally, Western interference in African politics under the guise of democracy promotion or security measures can destabilize regions and undermine local leadership. Such interventions frequently prioritize Western geopolitical interests over African well-being, contributing to circles of conflict and governance crisis. This is the truth. For example, in Libya, NATO killed Colonel Muammar Gaddafi in the premise that he was a dictator and that he was killing his people and he was against democracy. Why is it that NATO wants democracy in Africa? Of what interest will it gain when Africa has democracy? It is only because they have vested interest in the continent. And that is why they want to prescribe for us the kind of leadership style we must have. the kind of society that we must live in. They're even trying to give us their opinions and way of life to adopt. And that is why I can tell you most African leaders are happy with the current elections that were just finished in the United States when Donald Trump came in. President Donald Trump is somebody who has never advocated for advancement of US way of life on other countries. He has said America first, putting interest of America first before anything else. And therefore, his ideologies and desires are welcomed in Africa because he does not impose anything on African people. To counteract these retrogressive forces, African leaders require support to foster equitable partnerships, challenge exploitative systems, and assert their agency on the global stage. This includes strengthening regional cooperation within Africa, building alliances with sympathetic global partners, and receiving backing from international organizations committed to fairness and mutual respect. By breaking free from regressive Western influences, Africa can unlock its vast potential, harness its resources responsibly, and create an equal future for its citizens. This is all that Dr. Arikana Chihombori Quao is advocating for in the clip that we just watched. She is a proud African and Pan-Africanist, and she has given lectures across the continent encouraging us to wake up from the slumber and get to work to ensure that Africa gets true liberation. Tell me down in the comment section what you think about this. And if you're watching us for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and also share. Thank you, and may the good Lord bless you. Goodbye.